In the end times, there's not only going to be diseases and pestilences, famine, money will fail, people will be moved into cities. There's a depopulation agenda, right? But there will be evil violence, especially against the innocent. And in the end times that we see in the time of trouble, where it calls it the wrath of the devil, that is against Christians. That is against Bible believers. There will be great violence, and there's already this agenda to disarm the world. Well, I had 4 points: spiritual strength, savings, safety, and my last is supplements. And this one's short. This one's a positive one, and I'm actually going to preach an entire sermon tonight on this point, but I want to show you in the Bible. You're in Genesis 43. As they come for corn, there were things they still had, even though they didn't have corn. Look at Genesis 43, verse number 11. And their father Israel said unto them, It must be so now, do this. Take of the best fruits in the land, in your vessels, and carry down the manna present, a little balm, and a little honey, spices, and myrrh, nuts, and almonds. Now there's something you can store. Here's some food that you can use as medicine. These are supplements to your regular meal. We don't just eat almonds. That's more of a supplement to your regular food source. They needed the corn and the wheat, so they went to get it, but they had the best of the fruits. And he starts to, this list is really interesting. He has balm. Balm is also called balsam. It's called a salve. A salve. This is a medicinal. They take oils or gums and they mix it with, it's like essential oils. It's basically medicine used as essential oils for medicine, for health. And I believe you should seek this information now. I had somebody, it was a decade ago, say, and they were a bug out nut. And they said, well, what are you going to do if you get a toothache and there's no hospital? Well, that's a good question. What will you do? What are you going to do if you get cut on the arm and it's a bleeder? And if you go to the hospital, they're going to lock you up. What are you going to do? Well, I guess I better learn a little first aid then, huh? Right? Well, so here they had the best fruits in the land. They were out of corn. They had some cattle, but they were out of corn and bread, but they still had the best fruits. They had some balm. And that's knowledge we should seek now. What balms help what things? While this knowledge is freely available, I think we should train ourselves. He says they had honey. Honey's one of the best, right? You ever heard of the land of the raw milk and honey? Raw milk and raw honey. Amen, right? Well, honey is a very valuable commodity. I was actually, Amazon had this thing come up, it was called hot honey. Ooh, hot honey, $40. Are you kidding me? Who would sell honey for $40? Well, when it's the good stuff, I guess so. How much more when there's a famine? How much more do you think honey would be worth? What would you give for some honey when there is none? When there's no cornflakes, when there's no bread, how much would you give for some honey? Well, here, this is something they were already storing. God's people were storing it for medicine and for food. And, you know, honey will heal wounds. It will help fight off colds. It's known as an antioxidant. It's antibacterial. It's antifungal. It has all sorts of great properties. God knows what He's doing when He makes honey. You ought to get some if you ain't got none, right? But the next He says here is spices. Spices. And this isn't just talking about cooking with flavor. These are meds. These spices were used as your medicine. You know, the Bible talks about the bitter herb and it talks about the sweet savor. That's these spices that each one has a different use, a different medicinal use. And one that's very famous, purging with hyssop, O Lord. Hyssop is known as Mediterranean oregano. Oregano is like, I believe, one of God's wonder herbs. You know, it's for purifying and purging, and we'll talk more about that tonight, but He says to have some spices. I believe there's wisdom in looking at this. They had spices on hands. Do you have essential oils? Do you have herbs and supplements just in case there's a major famine of good food? Have you thought about that? Are you applying it right now? Then He says myrrh. Myrrh is a gum, but it helps with digestive things and it boosts immunity. You can put it on your skin for certain things. It also helps with coughs and colds. Then He says nuts. Nuts. Now He says nuts and almonds, and there's a distinction. We would think an almond is a nut, which I guess it is, but God distinguishes the two. Nuts commonly are, you know, they have calories and protein and carbs and fiber and different fats and oils that are in them that are good. I would say get some nuts. But when He separates almonds, for me, I'm a little bit of a health nut, or an ex-health nut, I guess you could say, but almonds is one of very few nuts that are actually alkaline. Almost all of your nuts are actually acidic on the pH scale, but almonds are one of the few that are actually alkaline and good for raising your alkalinity, good for your blood pressure. It contains a lot of the healthy stuff, the fibers and the proteins and manganese and vitamins and stuff like that. I want to read a little snippet. It says, the health benefits of almonds include lower blood sugar levels, reduced blood pressure, lower cholesterol levels. They can also reduce hunger, and promote weight loss. I've actually used them for digestive. You know, you had indigestion, hey, let's just use some almonds, and it helps with that. Almonds are, again, one of the wonderful things that God has created. And almonds actually, if you remember the story about Aaron's rod that budded, you've probably heard that statement. It was a branch. If you remember when Korah and all the false prophets came against them and they were murmuring, he destroyed some, there was still some murmuring. He had each of the tribes lay up a rod. He wrote the name Aaron on Aaron's rod, and he set it before the Lord. And then the Lord caused his rod to bring forth a bud and a blossom, a flower, and then almonds. So this rod overnight, which was a dead stick, brought forth almonds. There's something special about almonds. God gave it to us for a reason. We shouldn't ignore it. We should integrate it into our diet now. Yeah, you may want to store some for hard times, for a famine. So that's an interesting verse here. He says the best of the fruits, balm and honey, spices, myrrh, nuts, and almonds. My 4 points for surviving a famine are this: spiritual strength, trust in the Lord, savings, both food and financial, and then safety is paramount. Being able to protect yours, traveling in numbers when you can't have your own little army, your own little team, but also arming yourself, defending yourself, being able to have self-defense. And my last was supplements as medicine. And tonight I'm going to preach a sermon about the Bible diet. There's all these famous diets out now, the Mediterranean diet and the keto diet and all these kind of things. Hey, I'm going to preach about the Bible diet, that God has given us food to be our medicine, and the cure is in what we